days and pleasant nights, fellow travelers along the path of the beam. I am known in this realm as Jaime in Fuego, and if it please you, join me for a little palaver about Hail to Stephen King and a special report here on a Saturday. Yes, this is a show that I do twice a week now here on The Horror Show, every terrifying Tuesday, every scarific Saturday. And this past week, there was a bit of news that broke that just made me go ape shizzle crazoid status, man. Yeah, you see this novel, which is right up here? It's a little book called Dr. Sleep that Stephen King put out back in 2013. It was a book that absolutely amazed me, and in some ways I felt like could be read with context and without context. So if you were a fan of the book that it was a sequel to, The Shining, obviously you were going to get a ton more out of this. However, this was a story that was so unique in the new elements that it brought and in the similar story that it told, but yet all of the different nuances and whatnot. I felt like somebody who had not read The Shining could really have appreciated Dr. Sleep significantly. So everybody knows The Shining is one of King's most celebrated and controversial books in the fact that Stanley Kubrick in 1980 adapted for Warner Brothers Pictures this book, but very deliberately differently, at least in my estimation. Now, last year, before Hail to Stephen King was even a thing, when I was still going through all of these books that you see beside me, nearing the end of my 7+ year journey of reading every single Stephen King book, to get context, to get just every ounce that I could out of my absolute favorite authors. You can tell by this collection beside me. I did a retrospective 40-year anniversary all about The Shining, comparing the original novel from 1977, the Kubrick film from 1980, and the 1997 miniseries that King actually scripted himself that was more faithful to the source material, but maybe not quite as terrifying, and it was made for TV, so it was on a smaller scale, but I still feel like Mick Garris did a pretty good job. Performances were good. It's really just tough to pick in many ways which one I prefer. Probably, if anything, I prefer the book more so than anything else, but yet The Shining is not one of my favorite Stephen King books. It's not in my top 10, probably in my top 20, but Dr. Sleep is very close to cracking the top 10. It's not quite in there, but I did enjoy it more so than The Shining, and some people proclaim that as blasphemy. My God, how could you say that? Well, that's because of the fact that the villainousness of what Dr. Sleep entails is so fascinating to me. So just to give a little bit of context about this novel, which I did when I was doing a Shining unboxing, just to kind of speed through it, Danny Torrance, the son of Jack Torrance, you know, so infamously played by Jack Nicholson, and a slight bit more tenderly and accurately to the source material played by the dude from Wings, whose name I always can never remember, and I feel bad about that. He was also in Desperation, another Mick Garris adaptation. But long story short, Danny Torrance, the kid with the shinning, as we learned on The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror, he's grown up in Dr. Sleep. And yet, the novel starts out with a very interesting kind of, it's almost like an epilogue to The Shining itself, and so you encounter some familiar characters without spoiling anything from The Shining, and you find out, you know, just what happened with Danny and, you know, and his mother, you know, Wendy, after, you know, they escaped the Overlook. And so he's in his 40s now, and unfortunately he's encountering a lot of the same problems that his father had, you know, anger issues, alcoholism, and yet he has personally approached the drinking as a means of like numbing out the shining, you know, the shine, as it was described to him. And so, yeah, he's just kind of putzing through life, and, you know, he's a mess, and yet he decides to clean up his act. And after he does, he's working briefly in a hospice, and he's like giving some sort of, I guess, like psychic, like mercy of sorts, but things really start to rev up when he encounters a connection, a mental connection with a young girl who also has the shine, and then there's a group called the True Knot that basically feed off of the energy of those with the shine, most notably children, because as children, the shine is the strongest, and so there is the most power that they have the potential to attain from them. Ties in directly with the original location of the Overlook. And so the point of me mentioning all of this without spoiling anything is the fact that we are getting a Dr. Sleep adaptation. Oh my God. This was like the most exciting news of the entire week for me, if not the year so far. for Stephen King news, and I know everybody's so stoked about Castle Rock, but peeps, we are getting a fucking Dr. Sleep movie. My God, I am so excited. I was at the day job, and I'm like scrolling through my Twitter, and as I always do to keep up on information, not just for this show, but as a producer here on the horror show. And when I came across this, there was a rumor from a few weeks ago that this was a maybe kind of thing, but Deadline broke the news just this past week that it is confirmed that Warner Brothers, the same studio behind the Stanley Kubrick film, after the success of their co-production with New Line of It, is fast-tracking this. And normally I would have been like, okay, I'm excited, but who's directing it? And that was what made me just go crazy, man. Just like I'm thinking of the Simpsons episode again, god damn it, where he's like, no beer, no TV, makeover, something. Go crazy. Don't mind if I do, because we have Mike Flanagan directing and writing. I've been working on a rewrite of a script that was done by Akiva Goldsman, and thank the Lord in heaven he is off this project, because he's the guy who wrote The Dark Tower. God damn, did that movie piss me off and upset me. But guys, we have Mike Flanagan, the same Mike Flanagan who adapted Gerald's Game so amazingly, the same guy who did the very underrated Absentia, Oculus. For Netflix, he did Hush. He most recently did Before I Wake. He did the very surprisingly good Ouija, The Origin of Evil, which I absolutely enjoyed so much more than I expected to, with the turd that was the original Ouija film. And then, I mean, just the guy is incredibly talented, and he's currently working on a new adaptation of The Haunting of Hill House, I believe it is, yeah, for Netflix. And so he is going to be rewriting the script to Dr. Sleep. He is going to be directing it. He's going to be working with his longtime producing partner named Trevor Macy, who he worked on pretty much all of those films that I just mentioned. Gerald's Game, Hush, Ouija, Before I Wake. Currently doing The Haunting of Hill House for Netflix, like I said. So after The Haunting of Hill House, that is Flanagan's next project. And so this just excites me so incredibly much, because the guy is a huge King fan, and he took such just care and detail for great characterization, great performances with his adaptation of Gerald's Game. So I'm through the roof with the possibility, well, it's not even a possibility, with the confirmation, but yet with the potential is a better P word, of what he can do with this property. Another P word. So I'm very curious if you guys have read Dr. Sleep. I cannot recommend it enough. It's scary at times. It's the True Knot are one of my absolute favorite groups of Stephen King villains that he, in my opinion, he's ever put to screen, or excuse me, put to paper, and I can't wait to see them put to screen. I'm so excited. I'm like fumbling over my words, guys, because they're basically like psychic vampires of sorts, and they appear, at least in this traveling kind of gypsy way, as a bunch of the elderly in their motorhomes, and they're just going cross-country all over the United States, and they're parking at RV parks, and since they appear old, it's very just it's very discreet, it's very nondescript, and so nobody is gonna suspect that these people basically are going all over and kidnapping, torturing, because when you torture these children who have the shine, it makes just the steam that comes from them, the power, even sweeter and more powerful than it already is for these kids in that ripe age of adolescence, because as you get older and you're not as, you're just like Danny, you're not paying as much attention to the shine, you're trying to drown it out, whatever. When you're in that naive, just ripe age, as I said, that's the perfect time for these people to, swoop in. And there's one particular scene in Dr. Sleep where this kid's going from baseball practice, and it's so effed up, man. But yeah, it's fascinating though, because once they consume the steam, they de-age. So it's very much like, it's, once again, psychic vampires, the best way I can describe it. The female protagonist, or the female antagonist, I should say, I always stupidly get those two mixed up, who leads this group. Man, she is chilling, and it's an endearing connection that Danny makes with this young girl. It's just, there's so many fascinating intricacies and connections. But the one thing that I have to pose that I'm curious about here, as I kind of, and this isn't going to be like the longest Hail to Stephen King video, guys. So, it was originally supposed to be me doing a reading of a unreleased Stephen King short story, which is here called it's in a compilation called The Year's Best Horror Story Series, and it's called The Night of the Tiger. And Cecil and I are doing this new series, I guess, called Startling Stories, and it's basically us doing a little read time with you. This is a King story that, to the best of my knowledge, has never been re-released, and it's not been in any of his proper collections. I don't think Cemetery Dance and any of the Shivers or, you know, any other publication has re-released it beyond that. So that was actually a gift from Brian Gatto from Horror Show Entertainment. Shout out to that guy. Super, super sweet gift from him. So I was originally going to do a reading of that as the inaugural, you know, segment in that series, but, you know, Cecil was like, no, I'm going to do the Hellbound Heart, and we'll, you know, push yours aside. So it was really convenient that this news broke, but that's beside the point. The thing that I'm most fascinated and curious about is how Flanagan is going to approach the discrepancies and differences between the novel and between the Kubrick. Which one is he going to use as the proper basis? Because I gotta tell you guys, spoilers, and this is gonna be just spoilers about The Shining at least, and, you know, just a little hint of stuff about Dr. Sleep, but nothing major, is that the end of The Shining was changed so drastically in the fact that in the book, you know, and in the miniseries adaptation, if you guys have seen it, the boiler room does in fact explode, and the Overlook is destroyed. Completely destroyed in the miniseries and in the novel proper. However, in the Kubrick film, which Warner Brothers produced, and Warner Brothers, mind you, is the one producing this sequel, Jack just, you know, freezes and, you know, is reclaimed, you know, from his weird evil and reincarnated spirit or whatever. There's so many adaptations, or so many interpretations about all of the symbolism within The Shining. But the ending of Kubrick's film, you basically presume he's returned home, his evil, you know, reincarnated spirit or whatever, and the Overlook is still there. Now, in Dr. Sleep, just like in The Shining, at the end, there is no more Overlook. And the fact that there is no more Overlook plays a direct part, plot-wise, without spoiling anything, okay, into Dr. Sleep. In fact, as we get towards the back half of the novel, it plays a very significant part. So that's where I'm really curious if there's going to be blending, and is there a way to merge both the most revered, maybe one of the most revered horror films ever, and the changes that it made with the King original source material, and, you know, will King approve because King notoriously hated The Shining, and so on and so forth. So that's the question that, as I was tweeting with different horror people, like the girls from Collider Nightmares, you know, Clark Wolf and P. Nemiroff and a few others, I was just like, how are they going to handle this? What are they going to do, you know? I'm personally thinking it's going to be a blending. There's going to be some sort of explanation for why the Overlook is no longer there, but who knows? They may do something completely different. I'm not 100% sure, but the point of the matter is I am so incredibly excited. Oh my goodness, this is just the most badass news about Stephen King besides The Outsider coming out in May that I've encountered this year. So, yeah, beyond that, we don't know a release date or production start or whatever. Obviously, after Flanagan gets done with The Haunting of Hill House for Netflix, but yeah, this is presumably according to Deadline and their exclusive report this past week. So yeah, you guys can basically understand the extent of my excitement about this. I think Dr. Sleep is maybe in the top 3 for King books post 21st century, you know, post accident and stuff like that. So this is beyond exciting for me. So gracias to all of the constant readers who have tuned into this particular segment of Hail to Stephen King. I've been Jaime Fuego. You can find me on all social media sectors, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. There is some new Infuegotainment stuff coming very, very soon as we approach Oscar season. I think that's when it's befitting for the relaunch because, you know, of the non-horror related, those are some of the most esteemed films of the year. I'm very excited about. You've already seen us talk about Get Out and The Shape of Water on here, but yeah, look forward to that. Also, if you haven't liked, shared, and subscribed, most definitely and importantly, here to The Horror Show, please do that. It is so supremely appreciated. Y'all have no idea. And if you share this video on your social media, especially Twitter or you know, Facebook or whatever, please use the hashtag Hail to Stephen King. And yes, give me comments, inspiration, criticism, whatever it may be. I appreciate all of you so very much, and I look forward to Tuesday's segment when I will be doing a 10-year anniversary review of Duma Key, which is actually in my top 10 Stephen King books ever. Yeah, ever. Yeah, ever. I'm rereading it right now. I'm about 300 pages in, and I'm being reminded why it is so amazing. God, that book is so good. And yes, Dr. Sleep is not too far off. So once again, hasta luego, sin amigos, until the Wheel of Ka comes around once more, and until that instance occurs, stay scared and read Stephen King's Dr. Sleep. I think it's better than The Shining. Come at me, bro.